Alrighty guys, I'm on the side of the road here. I just saw this buck get hit. It's a young one. It's not a baby, but it didn't get to make it. Unfortunately, it's a small one, but hey, it's a fresh roadkill. I had to actually put it out. Whoever hit it broke its spine. It was flopping on the side of the road, unfortunately. But that's gonna be some meat for the freezer, guys. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing loaded up in my car, take it home, and show you guys how to bone out your own deer. Okay guys, it is the next morning. I've already field dressed this deer. I'm not gonna show you guys how to do that in this video, but I have done that before, so I'm gonna go ahead and link that video in the description if you guys wanna know how to field dress your own deer. But for this video, I'm just gonna show you how to process your own deer. We've had these ice bags sitting in here to keep this body cavity cool. You can see all the ticks starting to evacuate. They know their host is gone. So we're going to have to be careful not to get ticks all over us, and also to make sure we get them off the meat. So first things first, I'm going to take this deer. I'm going to place it on this table and work off the table. If you don't have a table, you can definitely work off the ground. But for me, it's just going to be easier to work on this table standing up. Some of the things you're going to need is a good knife and a knife sharpener. Also, if you live in a southern state or if it's not quite too cold yet where you are, some ice and a cooler will be handy. And some sort of bag and a container where you can put discarded parts or meat parts. And you can see I'm working in the shade too to try to keep everything as cool as possible. Okay, let's go ahead and get right into it. Go ahead, remove the ice from the body cavity. There's multiple ways to do this, so I'm just going to show you the way that I have learned to do this. Like I said, this is not the way, just a way. This gut hook on that knife tip comes in handy with this part. You don't have to use a gut hook, but it definitely helps in my opinion. First things first, I'm going to come up here near the front shoulders. I'm going to make a small incision, and then I'm going to take the gut hook, hook it in there, and make a cut down the hide all the way down to the tail. When you're cutting through the hide and the fur, you want to cut with the way the fur lays. It'll go through the fur more like a comb instead of cutting the hair down into the meat or the skin. So I'm going to find where the neck meets the shoulders, make that cut, and get it down. As you can see, I've opened up a little bit of its hide. That's going to give enough room to get that gut hook in there and pull it down just like a zipper on a jacket. You might have to clean out the hair from your gut hook every once in a while. The hair will get collected up in there and it can cause it not to cut as good. So just be careful not to get your blade too haired up. And you don't have to have a gut hook to get this done. You can do it with the blade side of your knife as well. Now that the cut is made, we're going to turn this deer around and we're going to work on the top half. We're going to make cuts that pulls the hide down and away from the meat so we can start getting the meat off of the body. Also, I forgot to mention, it's going to be handy to have a water hose or some sort of running water source nearby to clean as you go. I'm going to take the top half of this hide, start peeling back, and start cutting along where the hide meets the body. I forgot to mention, you want to make this cut actually up to the top of the neck so you can work on the neck meat as well. So one trick is to try to keep the knife blade close to where the skin meets the meat. You don't want to cut down into the meat itself. You just want to glide it right where the skin meets the meat and it'll peel back. So basically this is what we got so far. We're just working it back and peeling it down. Same around the neck. You just make a cut around the neck, start peeling that skin down. Now when we get down to the bottom of the belly where it meets the legs, we're going to take our knife and cut basically on the back side of the leg down to about the knee area. And that is for the front legs there and for the back legs. It's easier if you come back on the back side of the leg here and cut right along through there. And then we can work on the hams and the shanks. So I made a cut down the back side of the leg there. I just took my knife blade with the blade pointing outwards, used the tip, and just ran it right down the back side of the leg. Now we're going to work the hide off the ham and start getting the hide off the front shoulders as well. So I'm just taking the curved part of the blade and the tip of the blade, pulling the skin tight, and then just using that to disconnect it from the meat. I'm trying to leave as much meat as possible on the deer for minimal waste. We have now worked the hide off the back leg. Now I'm going to go ahead and make the cut on the front leg and work it off the front. Just like that. Now that we've worked the hide around, I'm going to go ahead and make cuts around the actual leg. You can do this first or you can do this last. Most people would do it first, which might make it a little easier, but to be honest, I kind of forgot. So I'm going to go ahead and make cuts around the leg so it'll be able to peel off, sort of like a sock. Alright, from here, it's basically the same process. You just keep on working the hide and the hair off the body and off the legs. Alright, now that we got the back leg, the front leg, and the half exposed, I'm going to rinse it down with the hose, and then we're going to start taking some meat off this deer. Don't forget to touch up your blade every so often to keep it sharp. Okay, so the first cut of meat I'm going to take off is going to be the back strap. The back strap is located basically from the front shoulder all the way back to the back hip. Just about right here where the back leg joins up with the body. It's a piece of meat that runs along this section right here. It's a very, very good piece of meat, one of the best off the animal. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that and show you guys how to do it. So what we need to do to get this cut off is we need to locate the spine, which runs right up through here. We're going to come right off the side of the spine, right in front of where the back leg joins up with the body. We're going to make a cut down this way, and there we're going to glide it along the spine, almost like if you were filleting a fish. And then it stops around about here where the front shoulder meets the body as well. And then we'll glide it right off the spine and then cut it right off the rib bones, off the top of the rib cage there. Find the spine, get as close as you can to it. And start cutting up the spine till you get to about the back of the front shoulder. And you'll feel the spine and the rib cage with your knife. You just want to glide right over them. Now I'm going to make the cut right where the hip meets the body. The back hip, that is. It goes down about 3 or 4 inches. So that's what we're looking at so far. It goes down about to where that is, right there. And they cut all the way up to the front shoulder. Now I'm just going to use my hand to pull back some of that meat and start working it off the ribs. All right, we got it freed up off of the top of the ribs. Now I'm going to do that same cut, except on the front shoulder this time. If you use your hands or your fingers, you can basically feel right around where the shoulder blade is, and you want to cut right behind it. So now we have both cuts on both ends and the cut that took it off the spine. You can make a cut here and start working it from the outside in, or you can just keep on working it from the underside like you're taking a fish fillet off the side of a fish. Okay, now I've worked off most of the back strap. You just pull it and cut it right off from the ribs. Alrighty. That right there is a boneless, tender back strap. Now some of the silver seam or the silver skin here, we're going to clean up later. That is very chewy, and the flavors on that little patch of silver stuff right there are not very good. So we will trim that off of this meat later, but for now, we're just going to go ahead and get it on the ice. Right off the deer, right on the ice. Now the next cut we're going to work on is the back leg, also known as the hams. There are multiple meat cuts on this leg, but since I'm going to take this whole deer and turn it into a 100% ground burger, I'm not too worried about making the cuts perfect and pretty, because all this is going to get ground up anyways and turn into like hamburger meat. So if you're wanting to use this as roasts, it will go a little bit different. You will cut a little differently than I'm going to show you, just to make the meat more presentable. But since, like I said, I'm going to grind all this up, it doesn't matter exactly how pretty the cuts are. So basically, you will follow different seams, like right here, along the muscles, and you'll just cut them off. You'll follow the seams, cut them off, and just work them off the bone. It's pretty easy. You just kind of feel around where the bone's at. There'll be a Y bone back here, the tail bone's up in here, and of course there'll be some main leg bones running through the middle. But besides that, it's not too hard. We're just going to go ahead and continue to work the meat off, sort of like we did the back strap. At this point, you can also cut around the tail and the tailbone to get it disconnected from the body and lay it down as well. Right now I'm just working the rest of the hide off the underside of the leg, and then we will get to removing the rest of the meat. So I'm just going to go ahead and work all this meat off the bone. I'm going to fast forward it up for you guys just to save a little bit of time. Here's a big chunk of meat right off the leg. We'll get that cleaned up later. On the ice it goes. Nice good red meat. If you guys are like me and really like fried chicken legs, just imagine this leg being a fried chicken wing or a leg. How you eat every piece of meat off of the bone, you work your way around the knuckles. Basically the same thing with removing meat off of this. You're just making sure that you get all the meat off the bone. And since it's being ground up, it doesn't have to be pretty. Alright, now that leg is pretty much clean. There's a little bit of meat on here that I can clean up as well, but that is the process of getting the back leg. Okay, next up is the rib meat. There's not going to be a whole lot of meat on the ribs here. There's going to be a little bit. Some people don't even save the rib meat just because it's a lot of extra hassle for a little bit of meat. But personally, I like to try to get every bit of meat as I can off of here without being super picky. So the next step is we're going to go ahead and take this little belly flap, continue to skin it down. And it will come off because we've already made our cut on the underside when we field dressed this deer last night. See, all that right there is meat in there. Now it is covered both sides by silver skin, so it's a bit of a pain to get it out, but it's still edible meat. There's also a layer of skin on the outside of the ribs as well. You can see it's starting to pull back right here, so I'm just going to work it back. Cutting around the back side of the front shoulder as well. And you can kind of look on the outside and see where most of the meat is. And this lower half is barely any meat on it. And there's a lot of silver skin. So we're just going to take off this top half right here. Just like that. On the ice it goes. Now is the next step, which is going to be the front shoulder. So for the front shoulder, what I like to do is I like to just go ahead, dislocate the whole shoulder and put it on the ice and debone this inside. It makes the process go just a little bit quicker. It's pretty easy to take this front shoulder off of the deer as well because there's no bones actually attaching it to the deer like there is with this back knuckle on the back leg. There is just a blade that's connected by muscle tissue and sinew. So we're going to lift up the shoulder, start cutting underneath and cutting around, and it basically will come right off the deer. First, we're going to go ahead and completely remove the skin from the underside of this leg. Now we're just going to work the shoulder right off the body. There's going to be the shoulder blade right here. You can see it right here. It's a round bone. So you're just going to take your blade and start cutting underneath and around it. You will feel the top of the bone right here. Just take your blade and follow along it. Cutting through the connective tissue and the muscle. Alrighty, that is the front leg. It is now completely off of the deer. Now what I'm going to do is break the bottom half of this leg off, so we're only working with what we need. So to do that, you want to take the leg and you want to bend it to where you find the knuckle, where it conjoins together and where that bends. It's going to be a weak spot right there. That's where you want to take your knife. Be very careful, cut through the knuckle, work up, try to work away from your fingers if at all possible, and it'll be easy to disconnect after that. Now this could have been done before, but you can also do it after. Like I said, this is one way, not the way. And then after you get that knuckle cut through, you can try to disconnect it by hand if possible. If not, you might have to get a bone saw or something like that, but it's pretty easy to disconnect by hand. You just find a weak point and it pretty much will twist or snap off. And you can cut it the rest of the way off if there's an extra tendon holding it there. Boom, just like that. Now I'll go ahead and clean up this little bit of extra fur off of here. Alright, now we got all the hide off the front shoulder. I'm going to rinse it down with a hose, get some of this hair off, and it's going straight on the ice. So it's a little bit hard to see now because there's still some fat around them, but right in here is the tenderloins, also known as the inner loins. It's one of the smallest cuts of meat. You don't get a lot, but in my opinion, and a lot of other people's opinion, it is the #1 best cut of meat off of this deer. So it's basically like a beef tenderloin, but from the deer. So to get these off is pretty simple. We just take the knife, cut around them, and cut them off of the back. We made our first initial cut in here, going up and down the top of the tenderloins, and then we're going to make another cut back here, and then cut them around and cut them out. Then we're going to come on top where they meet the spine and cut them right off of the spine or the inner rib cage. It's really behind the rib cage though at this point. And like I said, since I am turning all this to ground burger, I don't really care about how pretty the cuts are, but usually you want to make this cut right here as nice as possible to make nice little steak medallions. Or you can cook it whole. But like I said, this is all going for burger. Alright, we got the top one. Now we're going to go ahead and get the bottom one. And that one, we was pretty much just able to pull it out. And that is a nice looking tenderloin right there. That's how you'd want them to look. Of course, you're going to clean up some of the silver skin, but that would make for an awesome piece of meat right there. Now that we got the tenderloins out, the next part is going to be taking all the neck meat off. And now we're just going to work this meat off the neck as best as we can. There's no one way to do this. It's basically just find the meat and cut it off the bone. I'm going to start by making a cut through the top layer of meat up the neck, down to the spine, basically continuing that cut that we did for the back strap, down to the spinal cord, all the way up to the back of the head. So you can see all the meat on the neck here. I'm basically just going to try to lay it off in a sense, right off the neck. Some of these muscles you will have to cut down into and cut around to get out, but it's basically just like the rest of the animal. Find the meat, get it off the bone. Okay, there's some of the neck meat. Let's go ahead and get it on ice. if you can, you're going to try to leave most of the stuff that's not meat behind. Some of it might come with the meat and you'll have to trim off later. But for the most part, we're going to try to leave most of the skin, fat, and bone behind. Another piece of neck meat. Okay guys, and there we have it. Most of the meat is off the neck. This right here is the main spinal cord, and there is some meat on here, but not a whole lot. It's mostly bone in here with just a little bit of meat on top. Now you can go back and clean this up even better to get even more meat off if you have time and if it's not getting too warm on you. But my temps are rising quickly, so I'm trying to get all this meat on the ice as quickly as possible. So this right here is good enough. We got the meat off the bottom of the neck and the meat off the top and the meat off the side. Like I said, there's a little bit more meat on the ribs here. You could clean this up if you wanted to get a little bit more off of here, but it's not going to be too much. But besides that, that is how you debone your own deer meat. So now that I got half of the deer done, the other half is basically exactly the same. I'm going to get the rest of this meat off and on the ice, and then I'll meet you back in the kitchen to show you how to clean the meat and then how to grind it into some delicious hamburger. Now we're inside. I have removed all the meat off of the deer. I took the front shoulders off the deer with the bone in the shoulders so I could just go ahead and quickly get the meat on ice. But now I'm going to take the meat off the bone. It's basically going to be pretty much like the back leg. Same method. Just find the meat and cut it off the bone. Like I said before, the cuts for this deer don't have to be pretty. I'm not saving the meat for individual cuts. It's all getting grinded to burger. If you need to flip it over and work from each side, that's okay. Do what you need to do just to get the meat off of the bone. We will come back later and clean up some of this skin and some of the extra hair that got on the meat as well. Taking it off the bone and we're putting it right back on the ice. Alrighty, we got a big chunk off the shoulder blade. We're going to clean up the skin later on. Let's get it on ice. Alrighty guys, and that is the shoulder pretty much all the way cleaned off. I mean, there is a little bit of meat here and there, and you could be a little more tedious with this and go at it a little bit more and get a little bit more meat off of here, but not by much. So I'm going to go ahead and call it at that. Now the next step in the process is going to be removing all this silver skin. You're going to need a good sharp fillet knife, a cutting board, and a sharpener, and a good amount of time. This can take a few hours to several hours depending on your speed, the amount you got to go, and your personal skill level. So right here we have a boneless, beautiful back strap. It needs to be trimmed up a bit. This is the part where I'm going to show you how to trim up the meat, get it nice and clean and ready to grind or grill or however you want to cook this meat. All this silver and white stuff needs to go. You want to cut anything out that looks like this. You want to leave nothing but red meat behind. That's what you're looking for, is nothing but good red meat. Since I am grinding this, I don't have to worry about making pretty cuts. As you can see, it's a little bit cut right here, but it's going to get cut into chunks and then ground up anyways. So I'm just going to go ahead, use a nice sharp fillet knife, and be slow and careful when you do this because you don't want to cut yourself. But like that little patch right there of silver skin, I'm going to try to pick it up and just fillet that little piece off. You want to leave as much meat behind as possible. So like this little patch right here, I'm going to pinch it up, cut right under it, and then just cut that little patch of silver skin off. Some people call this silver seam, some people call it silver skin. Either way, it's chewy and the flavor is not that great. But if you have cats or dogs, you can save all these cuttings, cook them up, and mix it in with their food. It's very healthy, and most animals will love to eat this. So there's going to be little spots on here that you'll have to pinch up and cut off just like I showed you. But on other spots, there's going to be a lot bigger pieces like this. So it's going to be kind of similar to filleting a fish in the sense of once you have a fillet off the fish and now you're trying to take the skin off the bottom, kind of like the same method to get this off. So I'm going to put the silver skin side down. You can do it up or down, whatever is more comfortable for you. But I'm going to try to do it down first and show you that method. And what you're wanting to do is try to cut right above that silver skin and just glide your knife above that silver skin to see if you can try to get it off in mostly one cut. So that's what we're going to try to do. And don't freak out if you can't get it done in one cut. You can come back and try again. A little tip to get a good grip onto this stuff so you're not sliding around is to take a little edge of the meat, cut down into it, but not all the way down to the silver skin, so it gives you something to hold on to, like a little chunk there to hold on to. And then you can cut in from there, make your knife basically parallel with the cutting board, and then just start slowly filleting it. Now you can keep it like this, but sometimes I will take this piece of meat and fold it back as I'm filleting it. You just kind of see how it's looking and how it's going along. You want to try to keep the blade as close to the skin as possible to leave most of your meat behind. Alright, we'll flip that over and take a look. That's pretty good. Now there's a few pieces left that we're going to have to clean up, but we got that whole piece, just about 90-95% of it, off in one fillet. Very similar to doing the skin on a fish. And that's pretty much it, guys. Anything that looks like that white stuff, anything that looks like that silver stuff, any cartilage stuff or hard bony material, cut it out. You want nothing but that nice, red, rich looking meat left behind after you're done trimming and cleaning up all the meat. Okay, I'm going to clean up the rest of this meat, get it all ready for the grinder, and then I'll meet you there. I have all the meat cleaned up now. This is not all of it. I have the rest sitting in my fridge, but I'm going to start with this amount first. I have cleaned up all the silver skin, the sinew, the seam, whatever you'd like to call it. The only thing that's left behind is 99% red meat. Like I said before, we're making this into burger, so I got the meat grinder out, and I'm about to grind all this deer up. We're putting the speed on the grinder about medium. Get our catch bowl for the grinded deer, and you want your deer pieces in relatively smaller chunks so it can fit into the grinder easier and grind up as easy as possible. Okay, so I got the meat grinder on a medium speed, and right now I am just feeding the deer meat through the grinder. I'm using this tool just to push it down through to get it through the grinding process a little easier. You want your meat nice and cold, but you do not want it frozen. So putting this in the fridge half an hour or so before you grind it will help out. After I grind all this meat, I'm going to weigh the final product to see how much we have, and then from there, I will know how much pork fat and pork meat to add to this burger to make it even better. Okay, I'm going to grind all this meat up, and then I'll meet back with you after this. Okay, I have all the deer meat ground up now. It's looking nice. Now the next step is I'm going to weigh this to see how much deer meat we have, and then I will calculate how much pork fat and pork meat we need to grind up and then mix it all together. So I'm going to use my fishing scale to weigh the meat, and then we're going to calculate how much fat and pork we'll need to add. Right at 16 pounds. We're going to call it right on 16 pounds. So we'll need to add about 2 to 2.5 pounds of fat, and then another 2 to 2.5 pounds of pork meat. So we ended up with about 16 pounds of deer meat. So right here we have a little bit over 4 pounds of pork meat and pork fat. This is going to be ground up, and then we're going to grind the two together, mix the two together to make some awesome deer burger. Okay, I'm going to grind up the rest of this pork fat and meat, and then I'll meet with you for the next step. Okay, now we have all 4 pounds. It's actually a couple ounces over 4 pounds, but we have all the pork fat and meat ground together. And right here is all the ground up deer meat. Now I'm going to mix the two together in this big pot. I'm going to take a big scoop of deer meat, possibly 2 at a time, and then take a scoop of pork and mix it in so it evenly gets mixed by hand. We're going to put it back through the grinder one more time. When mixing it by hand, you don't have to be perfect. You just want to kind of mix it together just so there's not huge clumps of pork and huge clumps of deer that aren't kind of incorporated. But grinding it again will also do the rest of the mixing for you. One method is just to bring the stuff up from the bottom and to smash it down in the middle. But however you mix it together, it'll work. Okay, it's pretty much mixed up as good as we're going to get it by hand. Next, we're going to go ahead and grind it back through the grinder one more time. This is going to take a few minutes, so I'm going to finish this up and meet back with you on the next and possibly the final step. Okay guys, all the meat is grinded and mixed together thoroughly. 20 pounds total. 16 pounds of deer meat, 2 pounds of pork meat, and 2 pounds of pork fat. That breaks down to an 80-10-10 ratio. So next we're going to use a kitchen scale and we're going to measure it out in 1 pound increments. And then I'm going to wrap it up in freezer paper and date it, and we'll be done. So this part's pretty simple. Just get you a handful or so, weigh it out. Look at that, 1 pound on the dot, perfect. And I like to use about that much paper. That's, I don't know, about 1.5 feet, somewhere in there. It doesn't have to be exact, but it'll be enough to wrap up that deer meat. You want to go shiny side up. And I have noticed with this paper, it's a little bit thin, so I like to actually do 2 layers, and it keeps the juices and the meat contained a bit better. And then there's multiple ways you can fold this up, but the way I like to do it is I just place the meat right in the middle, make it into basically like a loaf. Pull up the edges just like that, and then begin to fold it down in about 1-inch increments, just like this, until the fold is nice and tight up against the meat. Then you flip it over, make sure the air is out. I like to fold over my end once and then fold it up. And then from here, you can use butcher tape or butcher paper tape. But the tape that I bought that came with this freezer paper was not that good. So I'm using masking tape instead. This works a bit better. And then I just tape it around. Horizontal. And then once the other direction as well, just to keep it a nice tight package. Alrighty guys, and that is the finished product right there. 1 pound of packaged, clean, ready to cook, delicious deer burger. All packaged. The only thing left to do is to date these and throw them in the freezer. And we're all done, guys. Ended up with right at 20 pounds. Okay, that's pretty much going to sum it up, guys, and that's how you make your homemade deer burger. Here recently I made a catch and cook video of cooking up some fish under a bridge, and it was delicious. If you guys want to watch that, I'm going to link it here at the end. But until next time, please consider liking, sharing with friends and family, and subscribing if you haven't already. Sam out.